It's a terrifying home invasion. A man with a flashlight enters a single mom's house and ends up caught on her security camera. And when she looked at the video, she knew who it was right away. Here's why.
It's terrifying. A man caught on security tape breaking into a home. What made this even more shocking is the identity of the intruder. It was 43-year-old Marie Columna's pastor. There he was in her kitchen, clearly identifiable.
You would never think a pastor would do anything bad to anyone.
When you follow God's vision.
And it's not just any church. 49-year-old Sergio Guardia was a pastor at a mega church, the 24,000-member Thomas Road Baptist Church in Lynchburg, Virginia. Maria and her husband were very close with the pastor and his wife, as seen in this photo. What was Pastor Guardia like?
Very charismatic, extremely nice.
But after she divorced her husband, Marie says the pastor's behavior became increasingly odd.
He started just showing up to my house. My kids wouldn't be home. It'd be in the middle of the day. And he would just show up and bring me groceries. He did that a handful of times. Sometimes I would get home and he'd be right on my porch. So I couldn't even avoid him.
But nothing prepared her for this. Surveillance video, which was taken while she was away for the weekend with her 2 kids.
I just couldn't process that it was Sergio.
Lo and behold, he came back the next day.
I was watching the live feed of him entering my daughter's bedroom.
She called the cops, and you can see them with guns drawn. They even use a police dog in their search, but the pastor had already fled. Guardia was charged with burglary and stalking.
Guardia has been found guilty, and a senior pastor confirms he's no longer employed by the mega church.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so in today's episode, guys, we're going to be looking at creepypasta stories. Guys, it's not that long ago when we found out about T.D. Jakes, a very well-known pastor in America, right? And people really held him in good regards, yeah? Only to find out that
he was connected to the diddler.
Yeah, those ones of you who've heard the story, yeah? So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at creepypasta stories, and I feel like we're doing this in order to create that awareness.
Right. So let's watch these stories. There are 3 stories, and then we come back and talk about it. You can also let us know what you think on the comment section, and consider subscribing if you're new to our channel.
Right. Before you go, I just have one question for our audience. After you listen to these stories, I'd just like to hear from you, yeah? Have you ever found yourself in a tricky situation or in a weird experience with your pastor? Let us know in the comment section, because I'd love to read all these stories, right? Let's watch and then we come back.
So Marvin Sapes decided that he's going to hold his whole congregation hostage. Who is Marvin Sapes? A famous pastor. So this man is holding them hostage, and he's demanding $40,000 out of the congregation, the whole congregation. Then he's demanding $100 from his pastors on stage. Not this man done told the ushers with a serious face, not joking at all, and people was laughing, to lock the door. He said everybody has to pay their seed. After they pay their seed, everybody gonna live together. That just goes to show you how money hungry these pastors really be, and it don't be about God. He pockets the offerings or seeds, whatever you want to call it. He pockets it, and it's not going towards for the church. Puts it in his pocket. That's his money he made. The church is so greedy. I ain't gonna lie to you. They want their money in any way they can get it. They're taking paper checks, Zelle, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, cash, wires, any and every form they can get in there. These pastors really be preaching the word of God to use you to get funds out of you. They're not putting those funds back into the community. They're not helping the homeless. They're not helping the orphanage. They're pocketing this stuff, and it's just so crazy. I love Marvin Sapes. He sings, "Never would have made it without you." I can't sing, but y'all know what I'm talking about. But that is crazy.
The fact that Trinity marriage stuff happened literally an hour away from me is crazy. In Ohio. Like, what? If you're from Ohio, then you know where Lorain, Ohio is. But that's neither here nor there. Why was the pastor keeping women in his basement and saying to his wife that he created himself a man cave? In reality, he was really keeping women down there and had people from the church. He had people from the church coming there. And apparently it was addicts. He's keeping addicts in his basement. The only reason why the police found out is because of the wife. The freaking girl from the basement escaped while the wife was coming home. And the wife pum-pumed her because she's thinking this is a random lady. That husband is dead wrong. He's dead wrong. And that's exactly why he is on trial. And so is those men for doing this.
Did you hear about the pastor who was convicted of stalking one of his members, and she had to file a restraining order after he broke into her house? This is 49-year-old Sergio Guardo, and he was the pastor at the mega church called Thomas Road Baptist Church in Lynchburg, Virginia. Sergio was recently charged with burglary and stalking after 43-year-old Marie, a former church member, finally got evidence of his harassment. Marie was out of town when she saw an alert on her phone from her cameras, and she saw this.
He started just showing up to my house. Sometimes I would get home and he'd be right on my porch, so I couldn't even avoid him.
The next day he came back, and she caught him on camera again. Then the police came to search for him, but by the time they got there, he was long gone. Look at him. Marie says Sergio was her pastor at the Thomas Road Baptist Church until she left in 2016. Before she left, she said she was married to a man and they both attended the church together. When she decided to get a divorce, she says Sergio was very supportive. But once the divorce was finalized, things began to change. He said he would show up to her house uninvited with groceries, saying he wanted to help her. And then he would go through her friends list on Facebook and tell her she have too many male friends and she needs to delete them. This married pastor continued to show up to her house uninvited, even when she asked him to stop. She said one day she came home and found him sitting on her couch using her laptop. When she asked him what he was doing there, he just acted excited to see her. Then one day out of the blue, he confessed that he was in love with her and he wanted a relationship. And she told him she didn't want a relationship with him. She didn't even want to see him in her house. She went to the church to complain, but they just defended him, saying he's just trying to be there for you. She said she didn't call the police because he was a very powerful man. She ended up moving several times, but he would always show up. She felt powerless in the situation, and the only thing she could think of to do was to install security cameras around her house and inside. And then she caught him. By the time she got the evidence she needed to be able to go to police, she hadn't seen this man in person in years, but somehow he knew the exact layout of her house in the dark. Even after she gave the evidence to the police, the church member still defended him. The other leaders showed up at the courthouse to speak on his behalf and defend his character. Sergio the stalker only spent 4 days in jail and he was let out with a $5,000 bond. Finally, Sergio the psycho pastor has been convicted of stalking and burglary and he's now waiting to be sentenced. It's so wild to me that these men put themselves in position of power and they think that leadership means ownership, but it doesn't. What do you think of this story? Leave a comment to let me know. I'm Tiarka with the T. Follow for more.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section, yeah? You know, as I mentioned in the introduction, I feel like TD Jakes is a good example of people who trusted pastors and pastors ended up being who they were not supposed to be, you know, because we also heard about some of his victims who came out to say what he allegedly did to them. Right now we say allegedly because it's still an ongoing case, yeah? But I don't know how many of you heard about the allegations of what he had done, yeah? And sometimes I usually think that churches are places where the most heinous things usually happens but are swept under the rug because nobody expects a church to be a not so safe place for their kids or themselves, you know. So let's talk about the first priest who broke into a woman's house. You know, I think the red signs were when he would often visit this woman and even let himself in her space, you know. And okay, it's not strange for for him to volunteer
even-
to help with her divorce. Some pastors are good.
No, but
like
he was
that.
overdoing it. Plus, he was also telling this woman that she had way too many friends on Facebook.
What business of his was that, Anyway, moving forward, guys, imagine, how do you feel? Thank God the lady had security cameras in her building, because this is the kind of
But
thing.
she never used to have. I think when she noticed
suspected.
that, he started stalking her. That is when she installed the cameras.
Right, and I was saying, imagine if she didn't have these cameras. This is the kind of woman who'd go out there and tell people what she was going through, but nobody would believe her, because nobody can believe a preacher can do this. Maybe some people would even say that she was trying to tarnish the good pastor's name. And how many cases of you, like, it's not only common. I mean, it's not only in America, but even here in Africa, we have seen cases where preachers are doing sinister things, but because their audience trusts them so much, they fall victims into some of their, practices. We had a very common case here in Kenya. I don't know how many of you heard of it, but if you didn't, just look for the Shakahola massacre. Yeah? This was a priest, but okay, personally, I choose to call it a cult because that is what it was. And this is a person who managed to convince a lot of people to go and fast, and people ended up losing their lives, And just the way he was doing his things, his criminal activities, and taking money from his followers, So it's not only in America. So here, my advice to people is, like, it's okay. They normally say you can take advice from people. It's good for people to advise you. But at the end of the day, you have to know what's good for yourself. Yeah.
Right. And for this priest to know the lay of the land, or to know this woman's house, even in the dark, it means this is something that he was doing over a long period of time. And he was caught breaking into this woman's daughter's room. So my biggest question is, what was he even going to do in that child's room? They usually say pastors are the biggest perverts.
True. So anyway, guys, we just did this video to create that awareness, and we'd like to hear from you. Have you ever been in a weird position, or have you ever experienced something weird with a pastor? Let us know. Nowadays, I normally hear people say, I didn't leave church. I mean, I didn't leave God, I left the church. Yeah. So maybe
do you think those kind of people are justified for thinking the way they think? Because maybe some of them have trauma, maybe not. But do you think they're justified for thinking how they thought? And then there was also another sister who spoke of a case where a priest was arrested because he used to kidnap drug addicts from his church whom he was supposed to be helping recover. And then he used to lock these ladies in his basement, and he would take advantage of them. And he would also arrange for elders of his church to come and take advantage of these women. And the thing that made this priest to be caught or arrested was his wife didn't know about this situation, and one day one of his victims tried to escape, and hence was shot by the wife without knowing that the husband was the one who had kidnapped her and brought her there. So she was thinking that the victim was an intruder in her house.
Yeah. So guys, honestly, I would say they need to run background checks on these people. But I also feel like it's difficult because these kind of people, they're protected by their profession and the cloth they put on. You can never think a pastor is a criminal. So I feel like for that reason, I don't know how many of these institutions conduct background checks, but I feel like it would be good to do that because you'd be surprised, because someone like TD Jakes, personally, I feel like this is a person who a lot of people had respect for. You could never think, and I know before something, there's always this thing they say that where there's smoke, there's fire. So these things are not things that only come out in one day. You find that there are victims who normally speak up, but over the course of time, people don't believe them, maybe, and that fire gets put off, until they normally say the 40th day will arrive for a thief to be caught. Until that 40th day arrives is when the truth starts coming out,
Right. And personally, I usually feel like some churches are run like a business.
Right.
Some priests run churches like a business because tell me why, when I was in high school, my first business, I wanted to have a church because I used to look at congregants as people who...
When was this?
When I was in high school.
So you are already planning a way to make money in form of churches.
Yeah, because I could see, every time I attended,
actually in Africa, priests
it's a
are
good
very
business.
rich.
Yes.
Priests are rich, and they drive the kind of vehicles they move around with.
It's because the churches that I'd attend, I would just see how priests would collect money, and that would be the happiest time in the sermons, and the cars they drive, and I'd be like, how much did they make today? So when I was in high school, that was the kind of conversations I'd have in my head, until I came to realize that that wasn't even a good way of thinking. And if I'm thinking like that, then I'm in a wrong church.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But
So
guys, it's not to say that all churches are bad. There are priests out there who are genuine, and genuinely they're aiming to lead God's people towards the right path. Yeah.
Yes. So I think ultimately what you need to do is ask God for discernment and know when you're being led by the correct person or not. Because the case of Marvin, the priest who locked his congregants in church and demanded that nobody was gonna go out of church until everybody gave him $40,000.
What was he going? I feel like people normally work with goals, because even me,
people have projects out
here and they work with goals. So if you see someone riding other people hard, it's because maybe they have a certain goal. The question you have to ask is, what was he planning for that money? Because in Africa, when priests collect money and they want a specific amount of money, they're gonna tell the congregants, maybe for example, we want to build a new church, or we want to build a school for the community. So what was that priest Marvin going to do with the $40,000?
Anyway, that being said, guys, let us know what you think about this episode, and also consider subscribing if you're new to our channel, and we'll see you on our next episode.